And we're live.
Great, everybody. Glad to see you tuning in tonight. And welcome to the regular crew. And it's nice to see you all. So tonight, I thought what we'll do is talk about paranormal history. We've all got, well, four of us have got tales to tell. Myself, Christina, Carl, and Glenn. And then Graeme is going to come in and ask us all questions. And we're going to do our very best to answer them all. So I thought, to be fair, I would probably start off this week, and then after each story, if you like, then what we're going to do is going to throw the floor open to questions for everybody. Likewise, if you want to comment or ask a question, then we'll answer that and then move on. So first of all, what I'd like to talk about is basically the history of modern spiritualism. It's relating to the Fox sisters in Hydesville. I'll try not to go on too long because I can talk for quite a long time on this particular subject. But basically on the 31st of March in 1848 really marks the beginning of modern spiritualism as we know it today. Basically, say instances of like psychic phenomena have been recorded throughout history, and all religions are roughly based initially on an event, which everything branches out. If you think, I'm not going to start and bring other religions into it too much because you could then start the can of worms. But basically, I think every religion has a belief in some sort of an afterlife. But what's known for was known as the Hydesville Rappings. It established a few things really. Firstly, that it's possible to communicate with the spirits of the so-called dead. Secondly, the communications were made easy because the people devised the code, which we use today. Thirdly, certain people are actually mediums. Certain people aren't, but certain people are. So really, what were they? What actually happened then on the 31st of March? Basically, noises were going on, as we know them today, rappings or tappings or whatever. They were going on in the Fox family home. They'd moved into Hydesville in New York State. Hydesville's not actually there anymore. But that night, it's built up, and they fever pitched, so the noises were absolutely crashing that night, and nobody could get any sleep whatsoever. So the two youngest daughters, who were Kate and Margarita, decided that they were going to basically try and talk to this. They thought they'd got a ghost anyway. And they basically shouted at the top of the voice, basically clapped their hands and said, "Come on, Mr. Splitfoot." Because I can also remember, I thought it was a weird name, but apparently that's what they used to call like a devil type thing. They didn't realise what it was at the time. Come on, follow this, do this, do as I do. So they clapped their hands, and they got a response to it. The same amount of claps. They're like, wow. And they then said, "How many am I doing?" And they did silent claps. They did like air claps. And the actual number of air claps they did, that was responded in rappings to the exact number of clappings they did. So they basically established that something there was intelligent. So it could actually see them as well as hear them, which I think was fantastic. And then basically, the more they did this, they set up an alphabetical code that we know today, minus Vic and Bob's one knock for yes, twice for no. Glenn's smiling because he knows exactly what I'm on about. They established this code, and it was kept going backwards and forwards. So and then they said basically use the knockings when we say you're a letter out of the alphabet. And because of this, it was established that the cause of this, the cause of the rats, was basically a peddler who'd been murdered, called Charles Rosner, in 1843. His body had been buried underneath the house where it was standing. So people tried to dismiss this and things like that. But the actual thing was, the strange thing was, in 1904, after all this, when they were redoing the foundations of the house, a human body was found with some, it's like a peddler's tin box. That was found buried underneath the foundations of the house when they were knocking it down. And that was actually reported in the media. Now, the Fox sisters, towards the very end of the month, become very, very famous, toured the world, demonstrating mediumship. People got into their head, and shortly before they actually died, they both strangely denounced spiritualism as all fakery and it's a load of rubbish, nothing actually ever happened and stuff like that. So they were forced into sort of like making a confession. Then they wanted to retract it straight away, but then they weren't allowed to retract it. Now, I don't know, was that media pressure? Was that, I don't know. But basically from there, that spiritualist movement grew and grew. So it then turned into a worldwide religion. And coincidentally with the spirit board and everything like that, we do that now. We do the not once for yes, twice for no, still today. So from 1848, it's come a long way. And I think it's a really interesting thing, and I don't think it should be forgotten about, really. Whether you believe it or people believe it, that's obviously up to them. But that is the beginning of modern spiritualism, how it was founded up today. So I don't know if I'll throw the floor open to anybody who wants to ask any questions about
that. I've actually sort of, what I've researched actually started with the Fox sisters too, so it sort of runs quite smoothly with what I've researched actually. But it's just interesting to hear
okay.
They actually renounced their spiritualism as they got older and they gave up.
Yeah.
That was most definitely a pressure that they felt, but possibly for religious reasons, because perhaps they felt as they got older they wouldn't go to heaven unless they renounced. You know, what was perhaps perceived at the time is trickery and works of the devil, perhaps, because back then they were very devout, weren't they? And spiritualism was as a religion in itself, so possibly they felt they had to do that to be able to sort of live out the rest of their life and then die as perhaps Christians again, possibly.
Yeah. Strangely enough, I think they're actually buried in paupers' graves.
Yes. That'd be really interesting to find out where those graves actually are, wouldn't it? Fascinating.
I'll probably say you could quite easily find that out, to be fair.
Absolutely.
But I think they actually are buried in paupers' graves. And I think for somebody creating this, whether they believed in it or not, they had a significant impact on a lot of people's lives.
Absolutely, definitely. It all started
personally, I think there should be some sort of a memorial to them.
Absolutely, it should be remembered. It's quite a remarkable story, isn't it, really? And it did all start with them completely and utterly. Because then it became a massive religious, well, not a cult as such, but it probably would have been perceived as that back then, because it was more of a religion. It wasn't classed as spiritualism then, was it? It was quite devout, and their following was very devout, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was, it was. I think it's a great story.
It is.
Yeah, and it's nice to hear the origin of spiritualism put in that way. And obviously, the two Fox sisters at the time there was very brave people to actually, I suppose in a way it's like coming out, isn't it? Very brave to come out that way. And despite all the naysayers, stand true to what they believe in. Obviously, with what you were saying there towards the end, where they had to, or they made that choice to denounce what they was doing, I dare say you're correct in what you were saying. It was media pressure, public pressure. It was probably getting ridicule, probably getting letters to their family and things of that nature. And so all that pressure to them must have built up, and they just thought, well, do you know what? We're just going to say, denounce it. But yes, very, very interesting. I particularly like the part you were telling us about the peddler, the tramp, if you like, that they found a body where they was doing these seances under the building. And he was trying to establish communication with them. And so, I mean, that's phenomenal evidence for a start, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I think what impressed me as well was the fact that they were doing air claps, not actually clapping, and they're getting the same number of air claps. So, one thing I did forget to mention, it's just come to me now actually, which I think was excellent evidence, was when they were doing this communication, the mum became involved and said, like, how many children are in the house, and she'd got 3 daughters, and there was actually 4 knocks, which corresponds to the fact that actually she had a miscarriage, and she never told even daughters about that.
It's fantastic.
Fantastic
evidence.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else got any more comments on that? Or
I like how it. I like how you was actually talking about, the knocking for yes and no, because that's something we as investigators do distinctively anyway. So for me to actually hear that and know where it actually comes from, was actually really, really nice, because, I didn't know where that came from. I just know that, it's something that we do. It's kind of like a learned process through your life.
Yeah.
So that was really, really interesting to actually know the actual origin of it.
Yeah, where it actually stems from originally.
Yeah.
Graeme, have you got any thoughts on that, mate?
I mean, there was 3 sisters. There was Margaret, Kate, and Lee. One of them moved to England when they were doing the trips, and one of them stayed in England. Now it says that Harry Houdini was trying to debunk this.
Right.
He devoted a large part of his life to trying to debunk spiritualism claims. As to the delusion of sound waves are deflected just as light waves are reflected by the intervention of a proper medium. I mean, in certain conditions, it is difficult thing to locate their source.
Yeah.
I mean, that's Harry Houdini trying to debunk this. Now, it goes on to say that Arthur Conan Doyle claimed that the neighbour had dug up a dog that was buried there.
Right.
Yeah,
because
dug up the cellar and found a few pieces of bone. There was no missing person named as Charles B. Grosvenor was ever identified.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's interesting, though. Yeah. Did you know there is actually an Arthur Conan Doyle Centre?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know.
Yeah, there's. I think because he wasn't high up in spiritualism, he was a big advocate of spiritualism. There is actually an Arthur Conan Doyle spiritualist centre.
Wow, that's amazing! I didn't know that.
No.
He was a profound believer, most definitely.
Yeah.
Whatever the sisters were trying to do, Harry Houdini was trying to debunk the spiritualism.
Right. Strange.
That kind of sort of ties in with what I'm going to say, Graeme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to share your thing, Christina?
Yeah, that's okay. Well, to begin with, actually, I was going to talk about the same lovely ladies that you were talking about. But the history and the origin did start with those lovely ladies, to be fair, because they were so monumental in the religious movement that was spirituality. And they did become very famous, didn't they? And, you know, a lot of people wanted to emulate their success. Unfortunately, a lot of the people that followed in their footsteps were trying to emulate their style with the rapping and what have you, and a lot of it was illusion. Two particular brothers, the Davenport brothers, were just trying to emulate the sisters, but unfortunately they didn't actually have the gift that they had. But they was copying their style in big auditoriums, and they became quite famous in their own right as well. But a lot of their stuff was actually illusion. They tended to have in the front rows of the auditoriums friends and family who they used to flank there, and also people who used to pay to be in the audience in the darkened auditorium and just make people throw things onto the stage, musical ornaments, and they'd play them, they'd throw things on the actual stage itself, and they'd actually emulate the rapping, the knocking. And unfortunately, the people watching that had paid money to go in to see them thought it was real. Harry Houdini, kind of moving on from what Graeme was saying, you are right, Graeme, he was actually set out to debunk this spiritualist movement, the religious movement of the spiritualism, because after his mum died, he went to an awful lot of seances to try and actually find a medium that actually was as they should be. Unfortunately, we found that the majority of them, it was all an illusion. And he used to go dressed up and out the fake psychics and the fake mediums. And he came across the Davenport brothers. And then when the oldest brother died, William, Ira, the younger brother, he actually gave up mediumship, and he was actually on Houdini's radar. But they became friends, and in actual fact, Ira Davenport actually showed Harry Houdini the majority of his illusional tricks that he's known for today, because he's more commonly known for his illusions than the spiritualist that he actually was. But all his tricks and his illusions actually came from the Davenport brothers' act, because that's what it was. It wasn't actually, you know, it was an act and it was all illusion, and they passed their tricks down to him, and that's how we actually forged his entertainment, really, and what he's known for to this day, which is quite interesting, because it did start out initially just to debunk fake mediums and psychics.
Wow.
So it's quite fascinating, really, because on reading it, you know, he's not known for that, is he? He's known for his trickery and the tie around the neck and the water tank and everything. In actual fact, he was taught all that by the Davenport brothers purely from their act, and that's what it was. It was an act, and their trickery became his name. But he's not known the spiritualist that he actually was. He started out initially to get messages from his mum that had just passed, which is absolutely remarkable, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Something that initially strikes me, Christina, is very interesting how he's done that. And yeah, there definitely are fake mediums out there. I agree that 100%. But the other thing about Houdini, and I've seen it in spiritualist churches myself when I've been attending, you can go to somebody to give them a message, and unless it's a specific person in a specific order in a specific way, they will not accept it. So did Houdini want his mum first, and for his mum to say specific things every single time before he would accept that?
Well, that's quite possible, because
and
anyone that's grieving will necessarily want the messages they particularly want to get through. So sometimes someone reading wouldn't actually be able to take a generic message because perhaps they were looking for more. So it's quite possible that some of the mediums and psychics who came across actually did have a gift, but of course they came across a lot that didn't as well. And I suppose with the emotion that you built up with a few that he found out to be fake, he planted fake information and things with a few of them, it probably spoiled it for a couple that perhaps did have actual genuine messages for them, which is quite sad.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought I'd throw that one out there. Anybody else?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's very interesting, that, Christina. Do you think there could be a bit of jealousy from Houdini about these people as well? I mean, the genuine mediums that could do it. And like Glynn was saying, with his state of mind, wanting like specific information about his mum, he had his blinkers on, so he wasn't seeing the bigger picture. And so I find that very interesting. And the fact that he emulated his act from the brothers there as well. I mean, you know, he I suppose he's renowned for his act, isn't he? And he doesn't mention them. They don't seem to get a mention, you know, where he got his material from.
No.
So
it all stems down to the Fox sisters, because without the Fox sisters, the Davenport brothers wouldn't have got their act together.
Yes.
Literally, hang on, there's two sisters here that are brilliant, so they're getting all this almost fame. And these two brothers thought, well, we can do that. So it all stems back down to the Fox sisters. And
so it has a snowball effect.
It was an illusion, but it all stems from the Fox sisters originally and their gift. So, you know, passed down the line, rightly or wrongly, it was literally Houdini doing what he did was all down to the initial Fox sisters doing what they were doing. But I also feel with Houdini, it became a crusade to him to perhaps debunk every single psychic medium that there was. Because perhaps in his head, after he didn't get the messages he wanted to prove that everyone was fake. So whether he came across some genuine ones or not, if you're in that mindset of not believing, you're not going to believe, are you? So
yeah.
I mean, being skeptical, open-minded skeptical is a good way to be, definitely. But like you said, I could mention some as well. Mr. Chris French, who's a professor of parapsychology, he blatantly refuses to believe anything. He is so dead against anything. He will not believe it, even though some of the professors have tried to sort of like tell him he's dead against it. So if you are dead set against something, you will not change your mind, regardless. Anyway, that's interesting. Thanks for that, Christina. I appreciate that. So, Carl, on another subject, you've got your telling, haven't you, mate?
Yeah, that's it. I was looking at Harry Price, who I consider to be one of the early paranormal investigators, and very much like Christina, another Harry Price, basically British psychic, obviously researcher and author, and he did his own investigations. He, like Houdini, was a magician. He was part of the magic circle, and sleight of hand and, you know, trickery and things like that. And he also believed in the paranormal, but he wanted to expose fraudulent mediums. So, you know, he had kind of like a background, really, where he wanted to prove it was real, but prove there's fakery as well. So really, going to what Harry Price is most known for is reportedly haunted Borley Rectory in Essex. Basically, really controversial. Literally, it was over 70 years since it became public knowledge. Actually, over 80, 90 years now, that in the 1920s, he went to Borley Rectory to look at the haunting. It's an old Victorian building, if anybody doesn't know out there, in a little Essex hamlet. It's got that typical ghost story look about it, you know, the old dark house, you know, murder, restless spirits. So, you know, everything typically that Hollywood would find fantastic in a particularly haunted house, but this actually was that type of house. He coined the term the most haunted house in England, and he actually wrote a book on it. And then he wrote a second book about it called The End of Boddice. And that was probably 6 years later, so about 1946. He saw lots and lots of things that he couldn't actually explain. And it basically been that intensive in his life for the last 19 years of his life. He dedicated it all to looking at Boddice Rectory and the investigations around. So basically, he'd rented the building for a year, carried out excavation work in years, and basically as a result of that, he made it famous due to lots of information that went on there. What actually was, some people obviously, claimed it was a hoax, but there was information given out that it was actually a hoax. So the house, from basically what I found is, the house owned by Louis Mayling was the second home until the fire in 1938, and they're going to discuss the inhabitants and the issues surrounding it. So actually, an investigation was carried out by the BBC, which really, really shocked me that they would actually look at this. But they investigated, and there was, when Mayling was 26 years old, there was over 2,000 instances of paranormal activity. And they concluded that the hauntings were true. It was given, obviously, the term the most haunted house in England, which by Harry Price. And he was seen at the time the most eminent psychical investigator of the time. And really, that was kind of looking at that. But basically, it's like his book became kind of like a Bible and like the foundation of knowledge for people looking at psychic phenomena. Obviously, a lot of people seem to believe that it's true. Obviously, people like yourself sit on the fence and things like that, okay? And it was visited by dozens of coaches, packed with loads of ghost hunters, people coming as far as America. And in this book, they had an interview with somebody that they would love to think that there was, his book was all truthful, and it was truthful for his viewpoint, but they actually believe a lot of it when they went themselves was kind of like saw a different side to it. I mean, basically, people like George Bernard Shaw, T. Lawrence, the governor of the Bank of England, okay, they were firm believers in the hauntings and attended seances at Boddice Rectory. So you've actually got some really, really influential people going to these seances. Basically, Mayling arrived at the house, and there was a eccentric reverend there and his 14 children taking active delight in telling the ghost stories about the spectral nun, the family ghost, paranormal activity in the area. And what they actually believed from these, so it actually wasn't paranormal at all. He reveals in his book so obviously this is his opinion, but his book about how a magic piano was played by spirit hands in there. He believes it was activated by the 6-year-old plucking piano strings with a poker from a gap in the wall. So obviously, he's looking at things, but this is what he's saying as well. Examples of poltergeist activity was done by various servants and children, and it was encouraged by the Bulls, the owners, to actually exploit it, and the fact that the house actually had many hidden doors and passages. There was activated by prodding servants' bells through the barred windows, over the wall in the kitchens. So basically, it goes on and on, really, that it was done basically, this writer feels, to save costs at Borley. Sea sand had been used in the walls in place of regulation material. It caused a permanent dampness which swallowed up anything written on them within a matter of hours. So it's effectively, they felt that you could write on the walls, and because the dampness then would soak it back up quickly, it'd be seen as vanishing and poltergeist activity. And obviously then it linked to the spiritualist side of things. So really, I've been looking into that, and it finished off with a quote at the end of the book by Mayling, who actually went there, and it says, "I can't explain that occurrence. To be honest, it still makes me feel rather taken because obviously he was struck by paralysis during a seance, and that actually scared him. That's the only thing that scared him. The only thing that he actually couldn't explain was the fact that a bell in front of him started ringing. So, he debunked everything else, but he's calling it the most successful hoax of the age, but it still sets his spine tingling because of the bell ringing in front of him. So although he, in his opinion, debunked 99% of everything, there was just one ringing of the bell directly in front of him that he knew couldn't be anybody touching anything, and that was really the thing that freaked actually this writer out. So I've learned a lot really from these kind of things, because obviously, the Borley Rectory story has been going for a long time, but I didn't actually realise there'd been a book about the actual hoaxers. So I've actually found that really, really interesting, Glenn.
Yeah, thanks for that, Carl. I've got two things there, but does anyone else want to say anything before I jump in?
I've got something to go back on to Harry Price and
okay.
called Helen Duncan. It was in 1931. She was paid £50 by Harry Price so that she could be examined under scientific conditions. Price was skeptical of Helen Duncan and had performed a number of test seances where she was suspected of swallowing cheesecloth, which was then regurgitated back as ectoplasm. Price apparently had proven through analysis of a sample of the ectoplasm which was produced by Helen Duncan that it was made of cheesecloth. And Duncan reacted at attempts to X-ray her from the laboratory and making the skin on the street. The ectoplasm of Duncan in another weight test was analysed by physical researchers and reported it to be made from egg white, according to Price.
Right.
Funny you should say that, Graeme, because I was actually just going to talk about Helen Duncan in a little bit.
Right.
So you must be psychic, mate.
Well, psychotic, whichever.
Yeah.
But, joke aside, Helen Duncan worked with Harry Price. Did you know that there was a Harry Price ghost hunter film made?
I didn't know.
Well, probably was one made in 2015 about Harry Price. So that could be worth watching.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. You heard it here first.
I particularly found that interesting, Carl, that he was involved with the magic circle as well. And also that he, rather than just believing instantly, he would look at all the other avenues first, regardless of how insane they sound. Like you mentioned, the children with a poker through the wall, gap in the wall, striking the piano strings. That sounds crazy, but I like the way that he's even looking in that direction rather than just saying it's a spirit doing that. It's got to be a spirit. So, I do like his way of thinking. But in the end there, that was interesting how the bell that rang in front of him actually really spooked him out, and it's kind of made a believer of him after going through and debunking everything that he'd experienced. So it's very interesting.
Really enjoyed researching it because there was a lot of stuff that I didn't actually know, so I found it really interesting.
It's fascinating, though, isn't it?
It's fascinating.
He's doing his damnedest to find any information or any reasoning for any of the unexplainable. You still have that uneasy feeling within him, and there's still a couple of things that you just couldn't think a way around. So I think that's fantastic, really. Though, even though we can explain most of the eventualities in the house, deep down, I still had that gut instinct that something was there and something he could work out. I just think it's brilliant, really. I think it's fascinating that a lot of people actually start out to actually debunk fake mediums and hauntings and what have you, but they can't ever completely explain everything. There's always something within their gut that tells them something's unexplainable, which I think is magnificent, because they're trying the hardest, aren't they, to completely write it off as fake. Even to that massive degree that he did, there's still that little tiny bit of him that thought, but I'm uneasy in this house because I can't explain this one thing, which was the bell.
Yeah. I mean, from a personal point of view, I've read a little bit about Borley Rectory, and I've tried to go down, but it's all just like a shell now, isn't it? Next to the church, Carl.
Yeah.
There's hardly anything left of it.
No, not a lot.
But which is a sad thing, really. But I think overall, I do believe that was haunted. I think it's quite interesting with you saying, I can see where it's coming from. Like we said, that somebody went across, I forget whose name you mentioned, that went across and spent the night there and debunked it. That ties in with us when we do investigations, if you like. To put that into context, I'm not saying making a case for either side here, but put it into context, Harry Price was there for about 11 years. He was there for one night.
Wow.
He perhaps collated that evidence over 11 years. It's like when we do investigations, we ain't going to investigations, but we don't know anything's going to happen. Somebody else could have had some experience of the previous day, and then we go in and not have a quiet night, and then we go, oh, that's not haunted, that's rubbish. I don't know, do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. It's almost like the old phrase, isn't it? Spirits are not performing monkeys. And plus, obviously, as you all as mediums know and as investigators, it takes the right energy at the right time with that right atmosphere to actually make anything happen. And one of them little bits that doesn't happen is like a fly in the ointment, and it just won't happen just because you've got one little instance that doesn't connect up.
It's like I'm bringing it back up again. That photograph we took at Mary King's Close, which I showed you, and you've all seen. The two of us took. You could go there night after night after night, and you would never catch that photograph again. That just happened to be the right place at the right time.
Timing is essential with everything, though, isn't it?
Yeah. And I'm just thinking, particularly with that time of the when Borley was being investigated regularly. If the guy, I appreciate him coming up with comments to say this was maybe done like that, and I think that's a good scientific look at things. But if servants and staff were encouraged and everything like that to make fakery, that's some conspiracy for everybody to just not say anything.
Yeah,
that takes a lot for every single person to not make one little slip up. I don't know what anybody else thinks about that.
Information in, wouldn't they, as well?
Yeah, it does. It's got to have a lot of trust, hasn't it, in order to make the game, so to speak, work.
Yeah.
Because of one false word to the wrong person, and it's all out of the water and out in the open, isn't it?
Yeah. But no, thanks for that, Carl. Appreciate that, mate.
No problem.
Glenn, you got something you want to share with us, mate?
Yes, well, I've got a couple of things actually, but because I've got a few photos to show at the end, if that's okay.
Hey, excellent.
But first, I thought I'd go back to the 90s with a group called the Skull Experiment, and this was a group of two couples, two men and wife. And we've got the Bennetts and we've got the Foys. Now, the Bennetts, they were the mediums, the two mediums, and the Foys were the observers. And what they created in Skull, in Norfolk, in the United Kingdom, was essentially like a seance circle. and everything was done scientifically. I want to say they had a sealed room underneath the house. They would only use it for this spiritual activity, maybe 2 to 3 times a week at the most, and then it was locked and sealed. It was a darkened room. They had, no external noises or anything like that. They'd accounted for that. And what they say that they worked with was spiritual entities that they channeled through as a collective.
Okay.
And the spirit teams that they worked with all said that the way that they came through to the skull group was they united thousands of minds working as one, and that these spirits would influence atoms and molecules in order to bring objects, physical objects, into the center of the table there, where they was having these seances. Now, they brought through a lot of coins, money, newspapers with dates on them. And there was even talking to spirit that was telling them that there was around on that particular date. And there's a picture of me in that sort of page in the newspaper. And spirit brought through that very newspaper, but rather than it looking old and disheveled, it looked brand new. And they had all the print tested by scientists. They carbon dated the paper, and even though it looked brand new, they could attribute it being back to that style of ink that was used back in the 40s, and that style of paper that was used back in the 40s. Now, some other things that the spirit team brought through for them in the various experiments that they conducted. One was they advised the skull group to put, when you could buy film for cameras, the sealed film in the rolls, they asked them to put some of those, just to buy them and leave them in the packets, not tamper with them or anything, and just put them into the center there of the seance circle. Now, upon doing this, Spirit said that they was going to imprint things onto this film. And so, after the seance and that, the group would go and have these films looked at and the photos taken from them. And bearing in mind that these films had never been in any camera, they hadn't even left the box, it had been sealed, and it had been signed by scientists as well. There was signatures, there was writings from different cultures, there was pictures from otherworldly entities in there, in the pictures as well. There was a catalogue of evidence, and they did this several times with various scientists, and they couldn't explain it because it was all sealed, all locked. Everyone had been checked prior to going into the seance and going out of the seance, and they could not debunk it. But some of the other experiments that they did as well was quite interesting. They'd use like the feedback off of a live video camera. So in other words, you use a live video camera and kind of off of a mirror, you fire it back into the viewfinder of the actual camcorder, if you know what I mean. So it creates a feedback loop. So you see loads and loads and loads of, if you see what I'm saying, loads of images, loads of pictures. Well, within that, they got what appeared to be spirit communication and shapes and otherworldly images. And it looks like they got some sort of alien life force on a couple of the clips as well that was shown. And again, that couldn't be debunked. So there was a very interesting group, and they ran from 1993 to 1998. And apparently, from the research I've done, there is a script, a screenplay in motion to adapt this into a film format. At the moment, that's what they're currently working on. But there's a fantastic documentary for anyone that is interested about the Skull Group, and I think that's on YouTube, and it explains in more detail, obviously, what I've just mentioned. And I think everyone that's watching this and into the paranormal will really enjoy that. It's a good viewing. So I can highly recommend that for you. But yeah, I just found that was very interesting that these two couples, you know, they got together 2-3 times a week, and you know, from very normal backgrounds, lifestyles, and they could produce, like you said earlier, with the right time, the right energy, the right people, all the ingredients had to be right, but they seem to achieve all these things with following those type of rules. So yeah, that's what I found out.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Glynn.
No problem.
So you said this documentary on YouTube, then, is it?
It is, yeah. It's called The Skull Group.
Right.
And I think it's the full-length documentary. And like I say, it goes into more depth, but you'll be fascinated because it just shows the evidence, and you've got obviously scientists being interviewed and things like that. And it's very compelling watch. You know, it's a compelling watch.
Yeah. Great, thanks for that. Anybody got anything to add to that?
I think it sounds absolutely wonderful. I'd love to watch that. But what's so brilliant is, you know, set of 4 very different people, 2 sets of mediums and a set of people that purely wanted to go there to actually debunk that, got together, and categorically all this unexplainable stuff happened. I think it's absolutely amazing. And the spirit must have been completely compelled with both sets of energies to be able to do all those things. And it's just amazing that obviously the unexplainable has literally happened. I mean, I'd absolutely love to see, you know, the feedback loop, and I'd also love to see the photographs as well. But that's absolutely amazing. But it's funny that you said that. When you said that, I thought for some reason I didn't actually know about them at all, but I'm sure I've heard a snippet of something about the actual film within the packet. I'm sure I've heard that years and years ago. I think that's been sort of heard of before and talked about quite a bit, but I didn't actually know the full story. So I think it's absolutely wonderful. It just goes to show that people can try and explain out of spiritualism and everything else, and try and investigate out of it to sort of give sort of a more scientific approach. At the end of the day, they can't. There's some things you know you can't explain. But I think that's just the way it's meant to be. So I think that's absolutely wonderful.
Right. Was you going to say something, Carl? Because I just thought you lean forward, mate.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm very, very sorry to Christina. She's turned around, obviously, and said, you know, about the believing part and tried to debunk it. And it just brought my memory back to a quote from a friend of mine who's an investigator. And his words were 8 out of 10 instances can be explained. Then he goes, no, 10 out of 10 can be explained, but we just don't have the answers to them all yet. I think that just sums up everything.
Yeah. Graeme, you were saying something, mate?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going back to the early 1930s or whatever. Now, whenever they took a photograph of like ectoplasm or transfiguration, person turning into another person, ectoplasm coming out of the mouth, why can't that be recreated now?
It can, actually. I've actually seen a guy do it in like sealed conditions at a specific event, not far from where I live, literally down the bottom of the street. Obviously, Glynn knows where I live, so he knows what I'm referring to.
It's not Stuart, is it?
It is, yes. Yeah. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Do you know what? Give him a plug, Stuart Alexander.
Yeah.
Great. I think he's a great physical medium.
Unbelievable what I saw, and I did see the ectoplasm, and you could hear it crackling. The medium was strapped to his chair. Everyone was holding hands. The doors were sealed. You know, all the strict conditions had to be followed. But there was musical instruments flying around the circle, all with like a luminous tape on, so you could see them. There was drums being played, and then the medium actually got lifted up while still strapped in his chair, and moved into the centre of the circle, and you could hear the chair clock. You know what I mean? And yeah, I mean, I've yet to know how that was done by spirit, and if it wasn't done by spirit, then my word, there were good magicians to do that. Yeah. But the energy in that circle was phenomenal, and everybody got tapped on the leg or on the shoulder or on the face by this unearthly hand. It was an amazing experience. So yeah, people still do it to this day.
Right, but it's still you can't just go. I'll say let's go next week and say it's done, because it can't be done that quick. And it's like it's always under certain conditions. Were the lights on? Were the lights off?
Yeah, the thing is with physical mediums as well, when they're emitting ectoplasm, it's such a sensitive substance that it becomes part of them. In effect, it is coming out of their body. And so if there's any sort of exterior ingredients that latch onto that, it can, in effect, it could actually kill the medium, make them seriously ill. So that's why they have to have these strict rules with it. And probably that's why all the conditions have to be right. And like we were saying, sometimes it might not happen in a seance, sometimes it does. You know, the ingredients have to be right for it.
I think answer Graham's question as well, from my point of view there, mate, from what you did ask, was when I've been to these events with them, the lights were low, but you could actually see as well.
Right, that's all right. Because if the lights were off, it plopped down.
Yeah, it wasn't actually pitch black. Yeah, it wasn't actually pitch black. It was low, but you could still make things out. You could still see, I could still see somebody on the other side of the circle. So I don't know if that answers your question, mate.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So what? I know you said you got us photos, Glenn. But yeah, I'll give you a break for a minute. Let you try and find them. But I'm just going to briefly talk, because Graham's partly helped me out a bit without mentioning Helen Duncan. But one little history bit of the fact that I can point out to her. She was born on the 25th of November in 1897 and died on the 6th of December in 1956. Now, yeah, there's a lot of histrionics with her. Harry Price. So he did actually conduct things with her. So. And yeah, it was potentially that she'd made things from cheesecloth. Photographs said that there was dolls in the room when it was actually when she claimed to have ectoplasm. But I think one particular thing that sticks out with me with her, some people don't even believe that the police came when they knocked on the door. So there's a story saying that she was conducting a séance in Nottingham, and so they tipped them off that she was there. And the police came through the door, and she suffered some internal damage through a shock, and subsequently died a few days later. Now, others say she'd got health conditions that was already ongoing. So you want to believe that, you want to don't believe that. That's up to you. Yeah. But the one fact is, she was the Scottish medium. She was the last person to be imprisoned under the Witchcraft Act of in 1735.
At the time, wasn't it?
Sorry, mate?
It was against the law at the time.
Yes. Yeah, she's the last person to be imprisoned under the Witchcraft Act. And since the spiritualism has become more mainstream, there is actually a petition, or if you like, to get her pardoned, because she was accused of being a witch.
Yeah.
But that was the main thing. So there is actually a petition to actually get her pardoned, a posthumous pardon. It's quite an interesting character to read about. If you want to Google it.
Yeah.
So, but
her as well, on the same lines.
Yeah.
Still kind of linked them together, didn't they?
Yeah. So, Glenn, you were going to show some photos, mate.
Yes, let me just get them up. Oh, there we go. Look at that. As if by magic. So I thought I would show some classic ghost photos, or alleged ghost photos. And there's some inscriptions, as you can see. So this is the Brown Lady, 1936 it was taken. This photo of the Brown Lady is considered by many to be actual photographic evidence of ghosts. It was taken at Raynham Hall in Norfolk, England in 1936. There had allegedly been many sightings of this figure before this photo, and it's said to be the ghost of Lady Townsend. She was locked in a room in the hall by her husband when found out about her infidelity. And then left. So that's one of them. I've got a few more. The unexpected guest.
Oh, that one, yeah.
The classic. Yeah. 1950s. So this image was taken at some point in the 1950s. Shows a small family sitting at a table. Two boys sit happily on their mother's laps. But a pretty terrifying and unexpected guest has also dropped in, hanging disturbingly from the rafters. So yeah, I do like that one. Another one, this is quite subtle. What's that say? Corroboree Rock? I can't pronounce that.
Corroboree, yeah.
Yeah, in 1959. Nobody knows who the ghostly figure is in this photo, but it was taken in Alice Springs, Northern Territory, Australia in 1959. Some people think it's just a case of double exposure, while others think it could be a spirit watching us or something else, because it looks like they're holding binoculars. Well, I suppose so, yeah. You can see that around there. And so the next one we've got, now this is a classic one. This is the photo that got me into paranormal in the first place. So we've got the backseat ghost, taken in March 1959. This photo was taken by Mabel Chinnery in 1959. It shows her husband in his car with allegedly her dead mother-in-law on the back seat. While paranormalists believe it to be real, others have debunked it as being another case of double exposure.
I don't believe that at all for that one. I don't believe that's double exposure one bit.
No, that's some serious placement, isn't it?
Too much detail, yeah.
And look at the eyes there. Crikey, me.
Yeah, plus 1950s, you'd not got the technology to do that.
No, absolutely not.
And what I want to know the most is, what is Prince Philip doing driving that car?
He's a time traveller.
I thought he got banned. Well, then again, he would have still retained his license back then. And
I can't even see that now.
And finally, this is another image that got me into the paranormal. And this is going back to those books I was talking about the other week, where I continuously kept looking at these photos. And this is Newby Church, and was taken in 1963. Some analysts think that this photo, taken at Newby Church in North Yorkshire, England, is a fake, because the character looks to be posing too much. However, Reverend K.F. Lord insists there was nothing visible to the naked eye when he took the photo, and the photo experts say it hasn't been double exposed. So, I mean, yeah, it's really eerie to see that.
Yeah.
I just can't help but think if a clergyman can say there was nobody in that church at that particular time, with all the religious connotations and beliefs that they have, you don't really get much more clarification than that you know, that is actually the spirit in that photograph. Because I think if there's any doubt at all, a priest wouldn't say, oh no, there was nothing in that church at the time, because it probably wouldn't have been the best thing for him to have come out and said at that time either.
It's not a good career move for the lad, is it?
Not at all. No, I don't think any preacher or priest would verify that as a real photograph. It's not going to do great things, because obviously in most religions the spirituality isn't allowed, is it? So he in theory could have faced being defrocked, so to speak, for speaking out of that. So I don't think he was lying. I don't think he risked his career.
The only thing I'm going to come out with from a psychology, throw it one out here. Yeah, I certainly agree with what you're saying, Christina. The only thing, looking at the photograph, I don't know if anyone else has spotted this, but if it is stood on the bottom step, how tall is this figure compared to the actual altar at the back? Because it does look quite tall.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does.
Yeah. In comparison, if somebody actually go into that church and stand there, okay, you might have to be stood further back, but that looks quite tall. So I don't know how many 7-foot priests there were around about that one time.
What gets me about it, although it's an incredible photo, is why would this monk type figure be wearing like this white cloth over his face, unless he was some sort of leper? You know, why would he be wearing that?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just an unusual garment to have on, isn't it?
Absolutely. But then lepers did wear things over the face, didn't they, for obvious reasons.
But isn't there?
I was feeling monk. You know, when you was talking, I was thinking, you just feel like a monk, definitely. And then you sort of clarified that, Glenn. Really, you just have that vibe, doesn't it?
Mm.
But isn't there a few pictures like that where you've got a spirit that's something white over the face?
With what? Sorry, over the face? Did you say, Graeme?
Like a white cloth.
Oh yeah, I suppose so. Yeah. I just found it odd that you know that they've got this garment over their face.
Yeah.
I mean, I do like the picture. I do feel it's sincere, but you know, I like to sit on the fence with these things as well. You know, as much as I want to say, yeah, it's a ghost and all this, I like to look at the other side. So that was always one thing that, and I never noticed that, Glynn, until you mentioned it. The actual how tall this person is in relation to the background. So that's an interesting observation.
Yeah, I mean, potentially, depending on where you stood in the church, you could perhaps do it with an average type person. If you were stood at back, you know what I mean? From a certain angle, you could look like that.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah. But looking at that photograph, it was taken quite close. So I don't know, just throwing it out there, see what people think.
Could I just briefly pop back to the brown lady? Would that be all right?
The what lady? Sorry?
She wants to pop back to the brown lady.
Oh, yes, at the beginning. Yes, there we go.
Is I can clear as day see a very tall staircase. So in my feeling, I feel like she was locked up and she had to go up. She was taken upstairs to be locked in a particular room. And I also felt infidelity even before you said that. So it's striking. I can just see a lot of stairs. It's crazy, really. So I do feel that she was locked in, and it was up a possible tower, even, or high up room in the house. It's certainly not a very nice story, is it?
No. I've just remembered. I've got a couple of more that I forgot to show.
Okay.
Now this one. These are modern ones. So, girls in Manila in the 2000s. The two girls in this photo were taken in Manila in the Philippines. Didn't report seeing anyone or feeling any presence when they took this photo. It was also taken on a digital camera, so it can't have been the result of double exposure.
It won't be double exposure. That will be caused by a time delay on the shutter.
Oh, of course, yeah. You would know, Graeme, because you're a cameraman yourself. Yeah, so you would know these things.
That can be caused by a time delay on actual shutter. So you can explain it is that if you've got a slow shutter release and you go into something and come back out again, it will give you that sort of effect.
Although the girl on the left looks a bit like Princess Leia.
That's certainly not Obi-Wan Kenobi.
No, it's not. No.
And then I've just got one more photo that I almost forgot. And this is Waverley Hills Sanitarium in 2006. This image was snapped in an abandoned tuberculosis hospital in Louisville, Kentucky in 2006. As you can imagine, in its heyday, the hospital saw an incredible amount of sickness and death, leading many to believe in the possibility that it could be haunted. And I just find this very sinister, the way that this so-called figure is looking at the camera.
Absolutely.
But again, the way it's presented in black and white, I find strange as well.
Yeah,
especially for 2006.
Yeah, it's got quite a dark feel to it, the photograph in itself, hasn't it? Almost like it's like a...
If you didn't know any better, you'd say it was a drawing.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It's like a drawing. It's crazy.
Yeah. Now, I believe there is residual energy at that place, and I'd love to investigate it.
Oh, I bet there is. It's fascinating.
But we've got one in England called Newsham.
Oh, marvellous place.
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't know, it's quite interesting to look at that photograph. Personally, I'd be a little bit sceptical on it. I think the more ghost photos you get nowadays, modern cameras, I'm a little bit more sceptical. The earlier photographs, I'm more convinced by.
Yeah,
so,
that's crazy. Yeah. I've actually got a photograph. Well, I did have a photograph. It was an old wedding photograph, actually. Although I've been to years. Actually, on the photograph, there's like a misty figure, and I've always believed it to be my ex-husband's mum who'd passed away the year before we got married. And you know, my mum was on one side, and there was a gap where his mum would have stood, and I didn't obviously see anything or feel anything at the time, because obviously you don't channel constantly, do you? But after looking at the photograph over the years, just like, crikey, that it's quite a obvious sort of misty figure, sort of next to him, sort of thing. So that's crazy. So
I've got a photograph somebody sent me once, and I remember, I will try and find it out. Somebody sent me in confidence. It was taken at a local pub, and right with two sisters actually, and strangely enough, the dad had passed 2 days previously, and one of them getting married, and you can clearly see a man's face right in between their two heads, and they swear blind that that's their dad.
Absolutely, yeah.
Fantastic.
If I can find it, I will actually. I will show it you. So, Graeme, have you got anything? Other questions, mate?
No, I'm cool. Well, I could go back on photographs. It's always like the older photographs, like the 1940s or 50s. On my mum's wedding photographs, there's a lot of images of like Indians and things like that. There's one on my auntie's photographs, wedding photograph that was taken. Now my mum, we got all off the baby just after birth, and in the auntie's veil, you can see the baby. So they're trying to get something out of it, but you can't actually, it's not physically there. But you can see the baby's face. So I'm going to try and get my dad to scan them in.
Oh, excuse me.
That'll be interesting to see that, Graeme. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to have it on a family photo as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
old photographs now. Find them all out.
Yeah.
But on the older wedding photographs, you won't get anything like on the recent ones of like the last 20 years. But you'll be looking at like the last like 30s or 40s, 50s.
Yeah.
They live in a digital age, though, so it's hard to look back on actual photographs because they don't tend to have them on paper anymore, do with the seem to be always through a lens or viewing it on a computer or a screen of some kind. It was generally on the old school photographs that we had printed out, and you think, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I'll have a look for that photograph as well.
I wouldn't have one of those photographs from them.
Yeah. Bless you. Glenn, have we had any comments still, mate? Or
just had a couple. So I'll just put them up on screen. So we've got a evening, guys. I think that's from Megan, one of our followers. And I don't know who this is because I've just got a high and a wave. So I
high and a wave. Okay. Do you want me to try and have a look, mate?
Yeah, you can do.
Have a wave back.
Yeah, I'm a wave back. Nice of you.
Next to
what? That was quite. Who whistled then?
Me.
Yeah. That high and a wave came from Lynn.
Oh, nice one. Excellent.
Yeah.
Hello, Lynn.
So,
hello, Lynn.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Lynn.
So, I know we've run over a little bit today, but I think everybody's really enjoyed it. I think it's been beneficial. So thanks everybody for joining with us, and take care, and I will see you next week. So, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for doing. Bye.